Now we have the piston and the cylinder assembled on the engine, and before assembling the head cylinder I want to check the ignition timing. I will check now because it is much easier without the head cylinder, because I can measure the position of the piston with the caliper. And you can do this job also with the head cylinder on, but you need a special tool for that, and I don't have this tool. Also, now I can verify the ignition timing, and I can make a sign here inside, because through this hole you can see the flywheel. So you have to assemble the ignition. And you have to be sure that you have these pins which hold because these pins hold the entire cover and also the ignition in the correct position. Here in this area of the camshaft in the front we have the points working. As you can see, we have a round profile without lobes, but here we have a flat surface which is 6-7 millimeter wide. This area here is very important, because in this area here we have the moment when the ignition system make the spark. So how it is working, this ignition system from BMW R35? As I have shown before, we have this round profile on the camshaft. Other ignition systems have some lobes that open and break the contact on points. On this type, when the ignition points are working here in this area, in this round area, the ignition points are staying open. They're open like this, not this distance, but I'm showing like an example. So the points are open when they are touching this round area. When the points are touching this flat area here, the points are making contact like this. In this small area here, for a brief moment, because we have contact here on points, the ignition coil is discharging. When the ignition points are opened again, because are touching again the round area, we will have again open contact on points, and in that moment the ignition coil will discharge and make the spark on the spark plug. So now I have to establish a setting for the minimum advance. This is for starting the engine. When you start the engine, you pull the lever and the ignition, it comes like this for minimum advance. We have the light, we have the battery. We have to put this connector on the mobile part of the points, because if you put in the fixed part of the point, you have light. We need to put on the mobile part of the point, and we have to spin the engine in order to begin the setting. we have to follow the red mark. And now we have the light, and we have to spin slowly the engine until the light come off, and we have to stop spinning the engine exactly when the light come off. So now I have to measure. And we have 2.8 millimeter, exactly like in the manual. So on the minimum setting, I have to measure again. Yes, we have 2.8 millimeter, exactly like in the manual. In the manual, it is written that for the lowest advanced, for ignition, we have 2.8 millimeter before top dead center, and for the maximum advance, we have 12 millimeter before top dead center. So now we have to establish the position for the maximum advance. We put the ignition on maximum. And we start spinning the engine. Now we have light. Now this come off. For the distance, it is way too far. We have 34 millimeters. So that means we have to put the ignition somewhere in the middle. And we will measure here. We have the light. And now the light is off. We have to measure. And we have 8 millimeter. 8 millimeter is good, but it might be too low. From the factory, for full advanced on ignition, we have 12 millimeter. Because we have modified the engine by installing a bigger piston, we have a higher compression ratio, and I will reduce the maximum advance to 10 millimeter before top dead center. So we have to find the position for 12 millimeter. Now we have the light. So we have 10 millimeters here. Okay. If we watch, let me put some light. You see, in the middle we have 8 millimeter. If you move just a little like this, you go to 10 millimeter. So this was the procedure to verify the ignition settings. It was easy for me to do it because I don't have the head cylinder assembled, but if you have the special tool, you can do it quite easy even with the head cylinder assembled. And you have to always know the values for the timing from the factory. In this case, BMW R35 engine, we know that the correct values are 2.8 millimeter and 12 millimeter for full advanced. For other engines, we have other values because they have a different stroke. But these values are almost the same. For example, for another engines, I have a value for minimum advance of 1.8 millimeter and 8 millimeter for full advance. So we have some differences, but not big differences. So if you don't know the correct values, you can go for a maximum 2 millimeter on minimum advance and a maximum of 8 millimeter for full advance. And from these values, if you want, you can rectify to add or to reduce the full advance on ignition or the low advance on ignition. But for these engines, we know the values 2.8 millimeter and 12 millimeter. I will make the mark on the flywheel for this engine for 2.8 millimeter on low advance and 12 millimeter on full advance. And after that, I will rectify for 10 millimeter on full advance because, like I said before, I have modified this engine. We have a bigger piston, a bigger compression ratio, and when you have a bigger compression ratio, it is okay to reduce the maximum advance on ignition. Why I have to make a sign here on the flywheel? Because after I will have the cylinder head assembled, if I will want in the future to check the ignition timing, we know that in this position we have the lowest advance, and for the full advance I just have to check the sign on the flywheel and make the test with the light, and these signs will be very helpful.